In this series, called 30-Minute Masterpieces, we explore artworks that can be completed within a 40-minute class period. Welcome to Painting with Janine Liza. In this video, we'll be painting a beautiful fall scene with reflections on the water. Materials: 140 pound weight watercolour paper taped to a board, water, a palette, paper towel and 2 brushes, a size 3 round brush and a 3/4 inch flat brush made with acrylic hairs. We'll be using concentrated watercolour paint from a tube. On the palette, we're going to need a few colours. We're going to need a large drop of yellow, red and green. We'll need a small drop of blue and a small drop of red. We'll also need some red and yellow to make orange, and equal parts of red, yellow and blue to make brown. We're only going to need a small drop of water in the mix for brown, orange, the blue paint, the green paint and the red, the large drop of red. In the small drop of red and the large drop of yellow, we're going to need lots of water. We want this small drop of red to turn pink, so adding lots of water will thin the paint out and make it lighter. Now I'm going to stir the paint, so if you're doing the painting along with me, this is a good time to pause the video and stir your paints. Before painting, we're going to coat the surface of the paper with a bit of water, just giving it a glaze. We're going to be doing a tipping technique, and putting the water on first helps the paint to float on the surface, so the tipping technique is more successful. To see the glaze, just tilt the board slightly. If water runs off the board, use a little paper towel to wipe the edges along the tape. Let's begin. Using the very watery red, we're going to put 2 rows on the paper. You'll see how it very quickly flows into the water and turns a nice pink. After quickly washing our brush, we're going to move to the watery yellow. We're going to put the yellow in 3 rows around the red. We'll make sure to put lots of yellow on because we need puddles for this technique. Once the paint is on, we need to move quickly. We're going to do a little bit of tipping, gently tipping the painting upwards, sideways, using a bit of tissue at the side to wipe anything that runs down, just wiping along the tape. All I have to do is add a little bit more colour and drop it gently into that space. I'm just continuing to wipe as the paint runs off the board. We'll need to take a 10-minute break to let this dry, and then we'll get back to painting. Your board can stay flat on the table for the next step so that your paint doesn't run, but I'm going to elevate my board a little bit just to help me with filming. We're going to be adding a brown line horizontally across the center of the page. We'll apply the brown very carefully with a small brush, trying to get the line as straight as we can. We're going to be thickening the line, so it's okay if it's a little bit wobbly to start. There. I'm going to be adding a little texture to the top of the line, while trying to keep the bottom of the line as straight as possible because that's where the water's going to be. Just little bumps that stick out on top of the line, gently placed there by dabbing the small brush to create kind of a rough, earthy texture, and maybe a little bit of grasses sticking up there. We're going to continue using the brown paint to create some tree trunks. We're just going to do some vertical lines, just little ones. These are going to be where our maple trees are going to go. For younger students and to shorten the length of the class, I recommend painting less trees. 2 lines there and 3 lines here. Now we're going to be using the orange paint and putting little dots of orange in a cluster on top of the tree trunks. Just keep going until you feel you have the shape that you want for your tree. Be sure to make the outside edges of the tree a little bit bumpy so it looks like there's leaves kind of randomly sticking out from the tree. If you have younger students who are painting less trees, you could fast forward this part to the next layer of paint. I'm going to paint this tree a little taller than the rest. To show the vibrancy of fall, I'm going to add red to the trees. I'm going to put this mostly on the right side of the tree, but a few specks on the left. With a little bit of brown on the tip of the brush, add in a few tiny branches. Then add in a few specks of brown towards the bottom of the tree and a little bit around the red. Okay, now it's time to add some evergreens. Let's go to the green paint. Again, for younger students, I recommend painting only 1 or 2 evergreens. We'll start with a line for where we want each tree to go. You can make them different sizes. We'll fit one in just on the edge here, so it'll be half a tree. Okay, here comes the fun part. We're going to turn these into trees, making sure we have a little point at the top, and then either zigzagging or just doing lines as we go down until they get wider and wider at the bottom. So it starts out short lines and they just extend and extend to a larger base. You can do the lines first and then fill in the tree a little bit after, and try to remember to put little tiny bits sticking out of the sides. They look like little branches. And what was once a blank sheet of paper is now starting to feel like a beautiful warm fall scene. To add a little shadow to these trees, we're going to take some of the blue and mix it in with the green. This is going to create a darker green. Then we'll apply this to mostly to one side of the trees, but again you can add a little bit to the other side for shadow. For the most part, we're going to put the shadow on the right side of the trees. We'll put a little bit of green for grass, and perhaps a little red and orange down on the ground too for the falling leaves. Let's work on the lower area. This area will look like water with reflections. Let's start with the brown. Dipping into the water before the paint thins it out nicely for a lighter effect. First the island and the brown branches, moving in a side-to-side motion, just gently tickling the surface with the brush to leave a slight impression of reflection. This is not still water, so once we're done painting the island, we'll be doing broken lines for the rest of the reflections. Keep an eye out for details you can add, like a touch of grass or the red leaves that are on the ground, etc. Keep in mind that your reflections are upside down, so if your tree is larger on the bottom and smaller at the top, you're going to be making it larger at the top in the reflection and smaller at the lower end. You'll notice that when I'm applying the paint side to side, I'm barely touching the paper with the brush. It's just the very tip of the brush, the side of the tip of the brush, and very gentle strokes. Now I see the intensity of the trees. I think I'm going to add a little bit more brown to the island reflection. The next part of the painting is optional for younger students, but if you are going to continue, let it dry first. What I'm doing is I'm applying a line of water to the water. And then I'm going to gently dab it with the edge of tissue and lift a little bit of the colour off the water just to give the water a shine. This presents more of a challenge if the paint of the reflections is still wet. After that, I'm going to add some little brown squiggly lines to the water. This just kind of adds a little shadowy movement in the water. To add a little more life to the picture, let's put a few birds in the sky. We can make them smaller and smaller as they go back to give the impression of distance. The full painting is now complete. Time to sign it. I hope you've enjoyed this project. Thank you for viewing it and/or trying it out. I look forward to sharing more projects with you as you continue in these painting classes. For more classes, go to Art with Janine Liza on YouTube.